You're listening to WCOM LP 103.5 FM Carborough and Chapel Hill. It's a Tuesday, it's 5 o'clock, and that only means one thing. It's time for another round of Snarky Faith with your host, Stuart Deloney. This is a space where we irreverently wrestle through life, culture, and spirituality, all with our heads in the clouds, our tongues in our cheeks, our hearts in our sleeves, and our feet on the ground. At Snarky Faith, the questions or even the answers are never the point. It's all about the conversation. So here's your host, Stuart Deloney.
Well, good afternoon, and welcome to another round of Snarky Faith Radio. I'm your host, Stuart Deloney. And guess what, guys? Thanks for being here. Thanks for hanging out. Welcome, welcome. Join in on the Snark Fest that we have going on this week. And we have one major idea that I want to go through for this hour. But before that, we've got to hit a couple of high points that have gone on within the weird Christian bubble that we, the Snarkiverse, act like a needle, maybe, that sticks into that bubble to pop it. Just a little, well, not a little, but a few points of craziness, which I thought we needed to go ahead and just exorcise the demons of. We got to get them out. Or we at least just have to put a little bit of sanity to the Christian insanity that was going on this week. So bear with me for a few moments. We want to hit a couple of highlights, a couple of things that have made me either roll my eyes or laugh out loud about or say, oh, sweet Jesus, how is this? Does this person continue to have a platform to speak out about Christianity? But it's the kind of Christianity that every S is instead a $sign. It's that version of Christianity. So let's go ahead and get to those so we can get to the meat. So this is the appetizer before we get to the main course. So without further ado, here we go. So before we can get to the new, we've got to hit some of the old. And I know we talked about Las Vegas last week, but I had to just give everyone a little bit of a rundown of some of the Christian crazies out there and how they responded. Now, we kind of ripped and rolled last week on the idea of people going, thoughts and prayers to everyone. And who somehow, I don't even remember how, I'm friends on social media with a prominent Christian voice, and she had posted a lovely picture. It said thoughts and prayers, and nobody commented but me. I don't know if it was the kind of thing to where after I said something, essentially that you'd gotten last week, that thoughts and prayers are BS when we have the ability as a country to be able to fix this problem. Yeah, she didn't respond to that. Sad. Tear, single tear running down my face. But when we're talking about crazy, you don't get crazy without talking about Pat Robertson. So yes, Pat Robertson, who part of the CBN network, has also hired Mike Huckabee to have his own show on CBN, who had his first episode with Trump. And we will dissect that on a further show because all of that kind of weird, narcissistic, Republican, conservative, Christian incest was on full display with the huckster and the Trumpster. But let's talk about good old Pat Robertson. So yes, we all know there was a massacre in Las Vegas. We all know that a crazy dude that owned way too many guns and had many other issues was a perpetrator of that. So Robertson is giving us a new narrative. He's going to tell us, actually, guys, that's not really what it was. And he's saying that the entire thing is because of a lack of respect for Donald Trump, pointing to the protest during the National Anthem, and saying that the country has no vision for God. I don't know how those two are connected, but he wants to connect them. Yeah. So he said this. He said, there's a profound disrespect for our president all across the nation. They say terrible things about him. And he went on to say, there's a disrespect now for our national anthem, disrespect for our veterans, disrespect for the institutions of our government, and disrespect for the court system all the way down the line. Disrespect. And so what he does, he's blaming the country that all of this disrespect is happening not because we have ears and eyeballs to be able to hear this bat crazy that is coming out of the White House. No. This really all stems. It all stems from our lack of biblical authority. Did you hear that? So really the root of all of this is that the Bible's authority is not being respected. And in these situations, I just kind of want to say, like, okay. So maybe the Bible's not being respected, but it's because of people like you, Pat Robertson, crazy old conservative nutters, that someone continues to stick a microphone in your face, in the nursing home, and you just continue to babble nonsensically, but people watch it, and people listen to it, and people believe your crazy crap. And yes, he lastly said, when there's no vision of God, the people run amok. And we have taken from the American people the vision of God, the whole idea of reward and punishment, and the ultimate judge of all of our actions. We've taken it away, and there's no vision for God, and the people run amok. Because you know what? People are running crazy amok, especially those African-American NFL players. They're running crazy amok. I'm not talking about during the game. I'm talking about during the national anthem, and they are running amok while taking a knee to protest non-violently something. So yeah, Pat, I'm not, like, all your synapses are not firing, and I don't think it's just because of old age. I don't think they've ever been firing. And so it's always wonderful to be able to hear someone that's mentally unstable defending somebody else that's mentally unstable. That makes for a good argument. So also in the land of Christians, crazy, and Trump, we also have Mike Pence, who decided to show up for, none of the Indianapolis Colts game. Yes, because apparently Trump had told him that if they disrespect the flag during the national anthem, you are supposed to go. And like a good boy, Pence, good boy, he did what his master told him. So he charged the taxpayers, I think they're estimating somewhere around $250,000 in security and an airfare and whatever else goes into that, for him to show up with his wife, whom he calls mother, to watch the national anthem and to get so peeved and pissed off that he had to leave. Which, at the end of the day, I mean, I understand, when the master calls, you got to do what he's saying. But at the same time, really, this is just a sad little sham that continues to happen. But you get sad little shams when you have a sad little man running the show. And lastly, before we get to our meaty discussion of the day, it's been a while, a week or two, since I've talked about my beloved, my dear. He's like my spirit guide, my Franklin Graham, like my spirit guide if somehow I was ignorant, racist, and bigoted. That would be him. And yes, Franklin Graham also had some words to say about the massacre in Las Vegas. When I hear Robertson and Graham talk about this, it almost wishes, part of my heart wishes that we could go back to saying, actually, guys, yeah, just do, the thing I ripped last week? Guess what? I'll give you a free pass on it. Just do the thoughts and prayers are with you, Las Vegas. Really just do that. Because your crazy crackpot nature, it's not helping things. It's not. We're a country that is very divided, partially divided by folks that are like you. So yes, here's what he had to say. He said this. He said, many people don't understand what would be in a person's heart to spray bullets into a crowd to kill and wound as many as he can. Speaking about here, the shooter. Or what's in the heart of a person who drives a car across a bridge in London into a crowd of people, get out with a knife and stab innocent people and police officers? Or what's in the heart of a person who would take a knife and cut off the head of another human being? Many don't understand what's in the heart of a person who's a senior attorney at CBS that says she has no sympathy for those killed or wounded in Las Vegas simply because people who listen to country music might be Republicans. Franklin, is this a country music issue? Is this really what it is? No. Okay. Sorry. He continues. The common thread that runs through the heart of each of these is evil. So I really like how he's attributing evil on equal levels for murderers, killers, and a senior attorney for CBS. All the same. So Graham says, the Bible says, he's quoting Jeremiah 17, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? Evil exists in the world today, and the Bible warns us that because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold. He's quoting Matthew 24. We see a rise of wickedness, not just in this country, but around the world, and Hollywood filmmakers will continue to promote evil, wickedness, violence as a form of entertainment. Our nation is in trouble, and God can heal the human heart. That's why Jesus came, to pay the penalty for our sins, to offer forgiveness through faith through him. So what's in your heart today? Or really, as most of these would say, to quote Capital One, as most of these Christian leaders, this is kind of like the underlying theme. What's in your wallet? What's in your wallet? Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, good old Frankie. Franklin Graham. The guy that rises to the moment to say the thing that doesn't need to be said. So when you begin to talk about the heart being deceitful above all things, let's talk about this. What about whipping up hatred in our country? What about divisive comments on a regular basis when you have a bunch of influence, Franklin? So somehow, like, I know you're lumping in, the murderer from the Las Vegas shootings. You're talking about the London attacks. And you're also talking about, I believe, when they're talking about Christians were killed over in the Middle East. And you're also including within that a senior attorney from CBS that made a comment. What about your comments, buddy? Like, what about the division that you create? What about the fact that when you speak, there is no love in your heart? There's no compassion in your heart? What about the fact that you have completely ostracized and demoralized the LGBTQ community? What about the fact that there is no grace and compassion in what you say? What about the fact that you are a fearmonger and spreading this type of xenophobia and paranoia that at its heart would tell me I don't trust in God? Like, I don't see it any other way, bud. Seriously. And I use bud in the most snarky, sarcastic way ever because, no, we're not friends and buddies. I'd have a drink with you, but most likely you wouldn't drink with me. And also, you're probably of the ilk where, I wouldn't want to be seen with you, kind of like Mike Pence, can't be have a meal alone with a woman. Yeah, that kind of a thing. I may kind of tarnish your image in the Facebook sphere, Twitter sphere. I don't know where you actually rankle your power, but you do by saying divisive comments that do not bring people together, that do not offer healing, that just point fingers. And the sad fact of the matter is that you hold a blame in this. I'm not saying in the Vegas shooting. I'm not saying that. I'm talking about the division within Christianity. I'm talking about the fact that you make statements like this that are not open for discussion or dialogue. You make this. You just are completely just laying out statements because I am the progeny from the great Billy Graham. His seed made me in a pure ceremony within my mother. And because of that, I have a platform to be able to continue to whip up division. Great. Awesome. Like, what does the Bible say about, I don't know. I mean, because you like throwing out scripture here and there, which means I know that you own a concordance. A concordance, for those that are not part of the Christian sphere, it's simply a book where you can look up topics and it tells you what verses they where the verses are within the Bible. Okay, so let's go ahead and do some of these. If you want to play that game, I can play your game too. Colossians 4:6, let your conversations be full of grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone. Oh, grace? Salt? I think you're really just piss and vinegar. Okay, so Ephesians 4:29, do not let unwholesome talk come to your mouths, but what is only helpful for building others up according to their needs, and that it may benefit those who listen. Proverbs 10:19, sin is not ended by multiplying words, but the prudent hold their tongues. Yeah, hold their tongues. And also Proverbs 15:28, the heart of righteousness weighs its answers, but the mouth of wickedness gushes evil over social media. I mean, I think that was in the Message version of the Bible, so I'm not exactly sure. But Proverbs 17:9, whoever would foster love covers an offense, but whoever repeats the matter separates close friends. What? Does it say that in the Bible? Huh? Yeah, it does. Again, back through Proverbs 21:23, those who guard their mouths and their tongues keep themselves from calamity. But you love calamity, bro. You love it. Like, you feed on calamity. Like, your brand gets better with calamity. Wow. Yes. I mean, that's how it works. And when you get to like Psalms 34:13, keep your tongue from evil and your lips from telling lies. Guess what? That works with crazy conspiracy theories. That works with the way that you are spinning the Bible into this dividing source, the way it works in America, especially when people are hurting and looking for answers and wanting to see some sort of leadership, some sort of guidance, some sort of commentary that gives us a reason to keep going and realizing that God is still here moving in the world today. Now, Psalms 141:3, set a guard over my mouth and keep watch over the door of my lips, comma, Franklin Graham. I mean, that was in the footnote when God was saying that, like, but it was prophetic because he somehow mentioned you down in the footnote. So yes, when we begin to hear these things over and over, so it's kind of like going back to the days, when your mom told you, if you can't say something nice, don't say something at all. Yeah, when you were a leader that Christians look towards, yeah, in times of troubles, in times of sorrow, simply blaming people isn't really the answer. Now, I understand this. I understand that you can flip this really quickly and say, Stuart, but you are being hypocritical. But guess what? The only difference, or maybe it's the snarky difference, or maybe it's me simply just picking hairs out. But guess what? I'm the guy with the microphone, and I can do it here. My difference is simply this. I am here to kind of throw cold water onto the face of conservative Christians here, of the evangelical circles that continue to spin lies, that continue to push their fake Bible news on the people, because I feel like in the midst of this, what it is doing, it is tangling the message of Jesus, and it is degrading the ways, the message of Jesus, the gospel. If you guys are from conservative circles, I think you are simply pissing on the gospel when you act like this in public. I think you are pissing on the gospel when you are playing power plays. When you have power plays for your own brand and voice, and you don't care about the word of God, you don't care about the people of God, you don't care about people in general, and that is the biggest part of this issue. You can spout the Bible all you want day in, day out. You can continue to rile up and preach to the choir, but guess what you are doing? You are not being compassionate, graceful, caring, and loving towards people. In times of trouble like this is not needed. This is divisive, and this is only self-serving. And guess what? You know who it's in the mold of? Not Jesus, Donald Trump. Because if you look at all of this, everything, from the hurricanes that have hit Florida, Puerto Rico, Houston, all of this, from the shooting as well, it all becomes self-serving. And we have gotten to this place in our country. It's not strictly just Christianity, but we've come to this place where when something happens, it is all about us. It is all about us. So in my most loving, my most graceful, My most compassionate way, all I can tell you is, brother, screw you and shut up, Franklin Graham. You are not helping. You are part of this noise that is coming out of the White House. You are part of this noise that is driving people away from churches. You are an impediment to people hearing the life-giving message of Jesus. Hey, guess what, Pat Robertson? You're in the bunch. And yes, I know, I am sorry Jim Baker didn't make it in the crowd this week, but we continue to see that. People that are all about words and inaction. And the sad thing is, I'm coming back to it, I would take prayers and thoughts are going out to Las Vegas over this bit of horse crap. It's not helpful. And it just polishes the knobs of the people that want to follow after you. Because guess what? I understand. That's how you make your living. But you know what? You're not an entertainer. You're not an entertainer. You have presented yourself to be the voice, the mouthpiece, the ambassador of the God of this universe. And this is what you're coming up with. Because really, we listen to these guys, you kind of walk away with going, God is kind of a petty little bitch. Like, he's really he gets something in his mind and he just can't let go of it. Or he's just really man, I don't like what's going on in this city. Boom, hurricane. Oh, I don't like what's happening here. Ooh, mass shooting. No, what? Like your version, Franklin Graham, your version of God is a sick bastard. And there's no nice way to put that. He is not the God I follow. He is not the Jesus that I have committed my life to walk after. I'm not really sure who you're following, but it ain't the God of love. It ain't the God of compassion. It's not the servant God that is and was Jesus. It's just simply not. And when you are continuing to just rile up these, especially in times where we need words of hope, what the hell are you doing besides causing hell here on earth? If that's your goal, tip my cap to you, my friends, and well done. But I would go ahead and wager that you would say, no, I'm speaking the truth. Yeah, you're speaking your echo chamber of truth because it plays to the crowds. And speaking about entertainers, which leads us to our main story here. And this is something that, again, started personally, and then now it is here on the air. So I work from home, and my wife and I try to eat lunch together most days. Some time to kind of just reconnect in the middle of a workday, talk, etc., etc. And so through that, a lot of times we will sit and we watch late night comedy to catch up on what we missed because, again, we're parents and people with jobs, and I'm not staying up till midnight to be able to watch these things. And what really hit me and what really drove the impetus, the theme of our show today was this. Typically we would sit and not watch what the Colbert's, Seth Meyers, Trevor Noah, Jimmy Kimmel's, and those kind of folks. And when we were hearing this, my wife had said, she grabbed the Apple remote and stopped it and said, I just can't. I just can't. And I was like, why, honey? What's going on? And she's like, all this is funny, but the stuff that's happening right now, it's really not funny. And we've been using all of this as some form of catharsis to be able to kind of laugh off what's happening. But as she told me, it's just gotten to me. There's just too much Trumpness. There's just too much darkness. There's just too much self-servingness and wretchedness and horribleness that is going on. There's too much division. And even though I love these guys and I love listening to the John Olivers, it's just too much for me. And it really got me thinking because yes, I have my priest of the day right now is Cardinal Oliver, who gives me his last week tonight on a regular basis. And when I begin to think through all of that, it really just hit me. And I think that it breaks down into two ways. One, we begin to learn to laugh at this insanity that has become normal. Not that it should be normal, but we laugh at it because it's normal. And we laugh as a coping mechanism. Or what we do is we tend to kind of just pull back and simply just go into the Netflix and chill zone where you just continue to check out of life. So we either just kind of try to minimalize it. And again, I'm not knocking late night comedians. In many ways, I feel like they're the prophetic voices of what is happening in this country right now. But what happens to the rest of us is one thing is this becomes normal. Like the crazy, the insanity, the chaos becomes normal. And two, we have two different ways of handling it. We just laugh it off and act like it's not real, or that we go off into our own, whether it's social media or Netflix zone, where we just continue to just kind of step out of reality. Because guess what? Reality is hard. Reality right now in the world we're living in is tough. We talk about climate change. We talk about gun violence. We talk about whatever crazy crap the president is pulling this next week. You know, as I've heard just most recently, he's kind of trying to use DACA as a way to be able to get the wall built. So now it's a negotiating tactic. We've heard where he's trying to eliminate the fact that guess what? Employers don't have to be able to pay for birth control. Oh, yay, because our country isn't totally a patriarchy. To where our country, aren't we supposed to value women as equals? Aren't we supposed to value women as equals in the church? Oh, but wait, all of the conservative narrative base that is behind Trump and all of this, apparently they don't give two craps about women, as we've seen this happen. Like, yeah, that's what's happening. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk through a couple different articles, really just discussing how to survive right now mentally in Trump's America when we see this. And it made me think of this as when she was having this conversation. So there's a great book. I mean, it's very tongue-in-cheek, but it's wonderful. It's The Zombie Survival Guide by Max Brooks. He wrote this years back, and I actually used this as a primer for my capstone paper for my master's degree, where I was associating his survival guide tips with the fact that the church in America is dead like a zombie. And so my whole paper, which I got a good grade on, was really kind of mirroring those two things, was mirroring this kind of fictional zombie apocalypse with this real zombie apocalypse that is happening in the church in America. And it began to make me think more about that as I was talking to my wife. And I was like, okay, so here is our kind of guide to surviving the orange zombie apocalypse or the conservative apocalypse or whatever apocalypse, because hell, I mean, it could be a nuclear apocalypse by the time this show is on the air, with Trump continuing to just like poke and instigate Kim Jong-un because you have two really angry toddlers that need a nap, but they're not having any of it. So they're simply not going to share, and eventually you're going to have a toddler fight, which if you've ever seen a toddler fight, it's really kind of silly, stupid, sad, and comical. And this toddler fight will be silly, stupid, sad, and comical, but it involves nukes. Yeah, that's kind of a heavy issue that weighs on your hearts. I mean, it's kind of a heavy issue when you begin to hear that, like, Scott Pruitt, that's in charge of the EPA, is going to continue to dial back and dial back and dial back when we continue to see our climate getting worse and worse and worse. So yes, so what do? How do you survive? Is alcohol the only answer? I don't know. I mean, we wonder why the opioid epidemic keeps getting worse. Maybe Trump? I don't know. And that's me being facetious. But let's go ahead and hop into how we can survive in the crazy conservative Republican Trump America. And so here we go. So first off, what I want to give you, one of the first tips, and this is something that I struggle with because, again, you know this radio show if you've been listening any time period, and I love to run off on tangents, and it's not simply my style of radio. It's really just the way my brain works. And so, yes, I am the king of rabbit trails with being able to run off in my mind thinking about stuff. And this comes from an article from Pathos by Grayson Gilbert and called Christians Are Far Too Easily Distracted by Things That Don't Matter. And my first point that I want to bring that I saw from this was that we as a people, I'm talking like even if you're not a Christian, even though I know this, a lot of this show is trying to recontextualize Christianity in a way that is sane and reasonable and actually makes sense. But this, when we are living in Trump's America, don't get caught up in the distractions. Now, I'll use my own moral justification on this one. Sometimes the distractions are funny. Sometimes the distractions are ways that we use to be able to cope through it. But when those distractions become something that we are kind of like, what is it, like sticking our flag in the ground and digging our heels in, we cannot get caught up in this because if you are a person that would say that you follow after Jesus, your focus should be what they say in the Bible, the kingdom of God, like bringing about healing here on this earth. Bringing about healing here on this earth. Okay, so let's talk about that then. So for the Christians that are outraged like good old Papa Pence, yeah, you want to talk about something that's about getting caught up in a distraction and missing the entire point? Let's talk about the pledge. Let's talk about the national anthem. That's one of those. That's one of those things where we run off the rails on, where people are so angry that these people are protesting and they're missing the entire effing point of it. Okay, peaceful protest because of police brutality. Great. That makes sense. That totally makes sense to me. So you're doing a peaceful protest that is actually showing respect to the country during the Pledge of Allegiance. Where's the harm in that? I'm not exactly sure. And guess what? Was our country founded so we could just somehow like love and jerk off to the flag? I mean, is that how it works? Really? Like, is that how we go after this? So somehow, if you just don't like love or like dry hump the flag like Trump has done, that you're not American? Like, I don't even like this line of logic makes no sense with me. I mean, I know it's something that it works in their own little bubble echo chamber because it's not challenged there, but some of this is just craziness. Like, are they causing violence? No. Are they doing this in a respectful manner? Yes. So why are Christians getting obsessed with this thing? I mean, seriously. I mean, if you want to get upset about something, I've told my kids they are free to never stand to the Pledge of Allegiance at school every day. And they don't. I've given them the option to do that because I actually think it's kind of a weird, sick thing for us to try to pledge an oath to our country on a regular basis, especially if you're also a person that says that you're a Christian and that you have given your life over to kind of be a part of the kingdom of God that wants to heal the problems in this earth and make them better, not make them worse. Yeah, this is one of those great episodes and missing the point. And we go through Gilbert's article here. What he's just really outlining is simply this, is that Christians get caught up in the nitpickiness of the world. They get caught up in stuff because, and some of this is more me than him, that Christianity has become a critic sport. Meaning that like this, like you're the armchair quarterback. You are the guy that sits on the sidelines and says, yay or boo. But like all of those people that were at the game that stayed, unlike Pence and his mother lover that he has, his wife, they stayed there and they chanted and they were excited. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with it in loving sports. Because most of you guys know that I am very avid and rabid about my fantasy football league that I'm a part of. So no, there's nothing inherently wrong with these things. But it's when we elevate these things to a level that they were never meant to be elevated to. Because guess what? I watch football. I pay attention to fantasy football. I read about football. I love football. College, pro, doesn't matter. But beyond the fact that I may get excited for a few moments or bummed for a few moments on the weekend, it doesn't really change my normal life. And when we begin to try to draw a line in the sand on these arbitrary, tiny things, so we're so outraged that there's people kneeling during the national anthem, but we're not outraged about why they're kneeling, or when we have the biggest mass shooting in modern history in America, and our response is, oh, this isn't the time to be able to talk about gun control. When is the time? When is that? I mean, see, those certain things, see the root behind the thing. So why are the players protesting? That's a bigger reason. not the protests themselves. Or like, should we really talk about like this mass shooting? No, we need to say thoughts and prayers to people or be divisive like Franklin Graham. Instead, we need to get to the bigger part of the issue is, oh, why did this guy have that many guns? Like, why is gun ownership in America out of sight? And I was just going to drop a few of these on you. And which is weird because I heard this on SNL. I was not listening to SNL for my news, but I heard this on Weekend Update. And I was like, no, these guys are totally wrong with their stats. But I looked it up and no, they're not wrong. So when we begin to talk about gun violence in America, okay. So 22, because it's hard to get complete exact stats on this, which is a whole nother issue of why we can't. But the people in America, of the American population that own guns, it's anywhere from 22 to 29% of the population. Less than a third of the population owns guns. Okay? So that in itself, and the fact that we somehow are kind of like ruled by the Second Amendment, or like, we can't talk about this. No. This is part of like, God created us a Christian nation and he gave us the Second Amendment because that's Christian. Again, bad logic. But not on me, on them. But when you begin to dig deeper into this, and this is where it gets insane or sick. So, 3% of Americans own half of the guns in our nation. Let that sink in again. And I will read this slower. 3% of Americans own half the guns in the nation. You see, that's something to explore. Kneeling during the national anthem? No. Distraction. And in all of this, see, we get caught off. We're kind of always like, what is it? Like, the kid, the dog from Up, where it's like squirrel. We are so distracted. And those distractions mean that this kind of, for lack of better words, distractionary nature that Trump operates in, something bad's happening. I don't want you to pay attention to Russia. Oh, so I'm going to start calling out the NFL. Oh, guess what? Tactic. He's not even a good magician. It's like sleight of hand where his hands are both out in front of you the whole time. And you're kind of like, wait. I can see what you're doing here, but nobody's paying attention to that in America. And so then for the rest of I wanted to dive into this. And this came from Psychology Today. And it's a survival guide to the Trump era. Embrace uncertainty. And there are some very, very good points here that the author, Allison Carmen, writes. And I think a lot of these are good things for us to be able to adopt. These are kind of like forms of meditation. So I'm not consumed with either apathy or rage, or I vacillate between, apathy and rage on a regular basis, which is probably not good for your health or the people that love you and are around you, especially if you have kids and all you want to do is talk about how insane Trump is on a regular basis. And they're like, Dad, can we talk about something else at dinner? I'm really tired about this because it's insanity every day. That's just a hypothetical situation, not real life at all, or the fact that I'm quoting my own children. So yes. So in this article, she writes, and I think this is good. Step 1, breathe, and breathe some more. Yes. I'll quote her. After you've read something in the news or see something on television that upsets you, take a long breath in and out slowly. Repeat it 5 times. You can never go wrong with this tactic. Deep breathing dissipates nervous energy from your mind. It slows your thoughts and allows you to see a situation more clearly, and helping you become less reactive to the unexpected and be more thoughtful about how you respond. I'll even say this. Her technique is spot on. Before you post something, breathe, and breathe some more. Breathe, and breathe some more. We need to slow down. And I will tell you this, for those of you that are like, That just sounds like New Eastern meditation techniques. Hey, guess what? Contemplation's part of Christian history. Yes, the idea that you slow down, you pray, you contemplate, you meditate, you think. Yes, guess what? Why? Because we don't react immediately. So begin to take on these patterns of breathing, slowing down, thinking. And her number 2 is adopt a mindset of gratitude. And she says this: you might wonder why gratitude is a second tip in the survival guide for uncertainty, but the mindset of gratitude is a wonderful, strong platform in which to stand when the ground feels a little shaky. And she says this: the truth is that sometimes we are so busy thinking about what is wrong with ourselves, Donald Trump, and the world, that we forget what is going right in our lives. And that, I think, is a huge thing. Number 1, breathe. Number 2, begin to be grateful about the good things. Because the bad things, and they are bad. And we get a constant barrage. What did Trump tweet about today? What is going on in the world today? What is happening here? And it can make us feel very dire and depressed. But we have to begin to be acutely tuned in to what is good. As much as this is bad, as much as this feels like absolutely unhinged insanity, there is good happening. And I've mentioned this many times before on the show, but I go back to this. It was an interview, and you can look it up. Slavoj Žižek, who is he's a philosopher, and they had him on the BBC talking about the election. This is pre-President Trump. And he was saying, and again, socialist, he's a Marxist, he said, I think the best thing that could happen to the U.S. is that Trump gets elected. When I heard that, I was like, what? What? Zizek, what are you saying? And then he said, why? And he said, if Hillary gets elected, it's going to be business as usual. And if Trump gets elected, it's going to be a disaster, but it will force us to change things on a fundamental level. That is a bit of gratitude, because we have seen so much advocacy, so much protesting, so many people dialed in that are usually asleep. And that's only on kind of the national level. What is going good in your life? What are you thankful for? Like, we don't have to just do this at Thanksgiving. Like, what is good? Well, for instance, right now we have clean drinking water. You're better than Puerto Rico. You have energy. If you're listening to this, somehow you have something that is powering a device that you can listen to this radio show on. Guess what? You have power better than Puerto Rico. I'm not dogging on Puerto Rico, because that is almost a war zone that is happening there. And I'm not saying gratitude comes from the fact that we can compare ourselves to others, but gratitude needs to come from the fact of there is silver linings to things. There is light that is happening on a daily basis. There are good people in your life. There are people that that elicit joy in your heart. Focus on those things. Because guess what? I'm a husband. I'm a dad. I know you're all surprised. Who would marry this guy? Who would have kids with this guy? But my point is simply this: I have blessings all around me. And as much as I get depressed, as much as I want to be snarky, as much as I want to run off the rails and just rail on all of this craziness that's happening in our country, there are beautiful, good things happening all around me. And if I become so obsessed with the bad, I don't see the good. And when I become obsessed with the bad, I can't see the good. And my perspective changes and it warps, and I will only listen to people that agree with me. And the way to be able to be open, to be able to have dialogue, to be able to respect others around us, is to be able to see the blessing of life that is happening. The blessing of life that is happening while life is still happening on this earth, as long as we can handle climate change in some sort of a manner. But sorry. The snark comes back in. I'm trying to deal with it here. What I'm saying is, find gratitude. Do you have a job? You may hate your job, but do you have a job? Do you get paid every week? Gratitude. Are there good people in your life? Thank them. Like, are there people really, and this is small and dumb, but if there are people that make your life better, tell them. Tell them. Like, don't wait. Don't just be like, oh, they know it. Oh, they know. No, like, text them. Like, dude, like, you make my life better. I really appreciate you. Go and do that. That is a mindset of gratitude. Because guess what? Those people that make your life better may be in their own little Trump downward spiral swirl, and they get a text from you or a call from you or a note from you when you're able to say, hey, guess what? You make my life better. And they're like, oh, I've actually done something right in the world, and everything is not completely going to hell. And when I say going to hell, I do not mean that in the biblical sense. I mean that in the very human sense, because humans are causing this. So number 3, separate fearful projections from the moment at hand. And this is a big one for me. And she says this in the article. So some people might argue that they live with fear and anxiety because of the bad things Donald Trump has said and what these things mean for the future of our country. Although Donald Trump has made dramatic executive orders, most with anxiety and fear, some of us feel a projection that these orders, what they'll mean for the future. So oftentimes we do this, and I do this all the time. I say, oh my gosh, this is happening. Guess what? What does this mean? Like, what does this look when it's like laid out in the future? And as much as I want to play genie or fortune teller, I'm not always right with that kind of stuff. Like, I'll tell you this. And so, like, with this, and side note, but it still fits. As soon as the gun violence happened in Las Vegas, we started talking about bump stocks, those things that were able to make a semi-automatic turn into an automatic, or more or less an automatic gun. And when you hear the fact that both Republicans and Democrats are like, oh, we should ban these things. Oh, we should ban these things. And then the NRA is like, yeah, we're willing to have a conversation about banning these things. Anytime the NRA says, yeah, we're willing to have a conversation about change, that should make everybody absolutely terrified, because this is a situation where you're being played. This is a situation where you're absolutely being played. Because guess what? The NRA has a long game, and bump stocks, they're not guns. So, yeah, we can blame this. Mass shooting, worst mass shooting in modern American history. It's all right. We'll have our sacrificial lamb here on the sides, but won't fundamentally change anything. So, yes, we have to be able to separate fearful projections from the moment at hand. And why is that important? And why did I bring up the NRA? And it's simply this. We have to stay sane, and we have to stay awake. Because when we are distracted, we are not noticing that the chess pieces on the board are moving and that America is changing. We are obsessed over here on the side, and we look away from the chessboard, and we stop playing for a moment. And that's what they're betting on. Like, you throw someone like a little scrap, oh yeah, we'll ban bump stocks, maybe. And everyone's like, oh yeah, we can agree on this. That's so great. But it doesn't actually fix the fact of what I was simply just talking about earlier about how many guns Americans own. 3% of the population owns half the guns in America. That should be frightening. Number 4, the maybe practice, as she writes here. Use the philosophy and practice of maybe to put a stop to negative projections. Come back to the moment and feel hopeful. So what she's saying here is simply this. As much as you can hear stuff, because guess what? So when Trump tweets, it doesn't necessarily mean anything is happening. I mean, it's giving you whatever state of mind he has in his tiny brain at the moment. But it's really just noise. And so we have to be able to say, oh, maybe that will happen. But guess what? There's more pressing news, like in my immediate life that's going on, or in my community life that's going on. And this is something that continues just to pull us away from that. And like she says here, she says, like, take like 5-10 minutes and write maybe statements on a piece of paper. These statements, such as maybe things will be okay, maybe things will be awful and then get better. Maybe my actions can make a difference, or maybe there is some hope that we cannot even imagine. And that maybe practice means this. It means that you're what was step 1? Take a breath. That you're waiting. That you're not projecting. You're not assuming. That you are very dialed in and awake in what's happening now in the world around us. You have that. You have that going for you. Those were her steps. And I wanted to add one to this. So in the midst of this, so if you're breathing, if you're having a better perspective, if you're saying maybe, if you're doing all these things, right? So you're doing the right things, which, hey, bravo to you. Well done. And if you're not getting it all right, guess what? You'll get it right the next time, or the next time, or the next time. Because guess what? I don't have it figured out either. We're living in the bizarro world. Like, nobody has a map for this. Like, there's not a map for where we're at right now. Like, to where we have a, I mean, this is well, the only map we have is if you've ever watched the movie Idiocracy, which if you've seen the movie Idiocracy, I would totally take WrestleMania version of Terry Crews over actual real lecherous, perverted, misogynistic, narcissistic Donald Trump. I would totally take that. And if you go and watch that movie, it's a cult classic, and it actually is kind of telling about where we're at right now. Like, kind of completely. Like, we keep trying to return to like Bible prophecies on this. No. This is kind of like actual like social commentary that is also prophetic. So yeah, go check that out. It's not a perfect movie, but actually right now I think it is way more perfect than it was when it first came out. My last thing that I wanted to hammer home here before we finish up is this. So with all this, so if you're breathing, if you're trying to put stuff in perspective, if you're trying to like be grateful, you're trying to look around and really just keep things level and not cray-cray. Here's the thing. So those are all good coping mechanisms. But here's what you do. Because I already mentioned that Trump is like the disaster. He's like, I say this, the disaster artist, which is a movie coming out here, you know. Oh, hi, Mark. But total side note there. But when we hear this, what I want you to do after you become grounded, after you feel like you've like, oh, okay, like I can attack the world, I can engage with the world in a better way. And I mean attack more in a not gun related way. I mean it in a way that is just where we're engaging. Here's what you do. So after you've been able to center yourself, after you've taken your breath, after like you've like kind of like, okay, I've come down from being reactionary. Here's what you do. Focus now in your communities on the pain. Like, where are people in pain? Like, who is hurting? Like, who needs help? I don't even care if you're a Christian or not. Like, those are the things that honestly matter. Like, we get outraged about policy. We get outraged about tweets. We get outraged about speeches and the entirety of existence of whatever Jeff Sessions is. We get outraged on those things. But we can't forget that there are way more people than the administration. There are way more people than the crazy Christians that continue to spout hate in this world. Focus on where people are hurting and go and try to help. Go and try to help. Go and try to make a difference in your own communities, in your own small ways. Where do people need you? So after you have done your meditations, you've breathed in and out enough. And after you've been able to see past the craziness that we are living in right now, open your eyes to the problems of other people. So where in your communities are people hurting? Where do people need healing? Where do people need grace? Where do people need compassion? And go there and do it. Because we're returning to the fact of the matter that if anybody chooses to follow after Jesus, really not about being an American patriot. Really about kind of ascribing to this whole new ethic of the kingdom of God, where God calls us to be self-sacrificial. God calls us to be giving of ourselves. God calls for us to be caring and loving and compassionate and graceful towards those that need it. Go. Do that. Because all of this ire that we do on social media and we watch stuff and we get all this, and I'm telling from personal experience, I mean, it is only good to a point. But if that point doesn't lead you to action to create honest change where you're at, then it's just as much noise as we're getting from the president and folks like Franklin Graham. And then we have just been played by all of them. No, the kingdom of God tells us to be bold, to be brazen, to go and love people with reckless abandon, to go and help people when it costs something of us. That is an ethic. That is a way of life that I can get behind. All this other crazy crap, no, it just makes me crazy. Because when you have crazy and you step into crazy, you become crazy. And nobody wants that, do you? No. Well, all right. So thank you guys for journeying with me this last hour. Just a reminder as we end this podcast that you can, this broadcast, that you can catch us on podcast at www.snarkyfaith.com. And you can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're interested, you can email us at questions@snarkyfaith.com. This is Stuart. I will be back next week. Thank you so much for bearing with me, for journeying with me, or for being part of the process. I appreciate you. So thank you. And I am out of here.
WCOM is listener-supported community radio, and Snarky Faith is only possible through our sponsors. Aqueduct Conference Centre was established in 1978 as a peaceful destination for small group meetings, special events, conferences, retreats, and weddings. For more information, go to www.aqueductcc.com. We are also sponsored by Lumen. Lumen, a spiritual community of seekers, sojourners, question askers, doubters, and skeptics, is a collective of fellow travelers that embrace the truth that all life is sacred, hope is real, and tomorrow can be better than today. All are welcome. You can find more information at www.lumencommunities.com.